Hello there and welcome to an impromptu Blood Red podcast with me, Joe Rimmer. I'm joined by James Pearce and Paul Gorst to talk about a stunning return to form for Liverpool last night against Red Star Belgrade in the Champions League. James, you were there. It took them a little while to get going, didn't it? But once they did, it felt like we saw the Liverpool of last season. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Certainly the most fluent I think Liverpool have played in as an attacking force for a few months, and it was long overdue. Of course, you've got to balance it against the calibre of the opposition they were up against. I think it was always going to be a difficult night for Red Star Belgrade, but Liverpool have made hard work of beating limited opposition so far this season. So to see them play with that kind of fluency and cutting edge in the final third was massively pleasing. And yeah, it was just a night packed full of positives, wasn't it? You know, you go through the team. It was, there was some big performances, and it was so comfortable in the end. But you're right, the first 20 was a bit of a struggle, but once that first one went in, you knew it was just a case then of how many Liverpool would go on to get.
Yeah, we'll pick out some individual performances in a moment. But first, Mohamed Salah reached 50 goals in a Liverpool shirt. It's taken him 65 games to do that. Paul, it's an extraordinary record, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to put into words how good that is, but it's faster than the likes of Suarez, Torres, some of the best goal scorers in recent history.
Yeah, it's weirdly kind of not talked about as much as it should be. Yeah. You know, these kind of levels, 50 goals in 65 games, it's just remarkable. It is kind of, it's elite level, isn't it? It's like best player in the world stuff, top 5 in the world. A lot of talk about Mohamed Salah not being there as good as he was last season. I always thought that was kind of a little bit exaggerated. People were kind of judging that against his blistering form of the spring. Mm-hmm. And I'm not entirely sure the full record at the moment, but I think he's probably scored more now than he had at this point last season. I think it might be one more. So yeah, he got the winning goal against Huddersfield at the weekend. He's carried it on last night, and long may it continue, because he is one of the best players in the world, undoubtedly.
Yeah, another little stat from last night that I saw, Neil Jones, formerly of this parish, tweeted earlier that Liverpool's front three at the same stage last season had scored 13 goals. They've scored 15 goals, or it might be 14 and 12, but they've scored more times this season than they had at this stage last season. And it does underline perhaps that this Liverpool side's doing much better than perhaps a lot of people are giving them credit for at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because obviously Liverpool didn't start last season well, did they? I think when you compare it to last season, you always expected Liverpool to be better.
But it's easy to forget though, isn't it?
Yeah, but then I think because they finished last season strongly, you just expected a continuation of that. But yeah, as Paul said, the standards were set so high in the second half of last season, it probably wasn't realistic to expect that they would be able to continue at the same rate. I mean, what was it, 91 goals between the three of them last season? Crazy numbers. The pleasing thing for me was to see Firmino and Mane back on the score sheet. I think you could see the difference that winning goal at Huddersfield had made to Mo Salah. That was the Mo Salah of last season. The way he took his first goal, fantastic pass from Shaqiri, touch with his left, hammered it in with his right. So you can see he's got his confidence back. And then I know Klopp played it down afterwards, but things like that do play on players' minds. I think Firmino gone 6 games without a goal, Mane 7, the worst run of his career, his Anfield career. And obviously when Mane misses the penalty, you're thinking, that's a bit of a sour note to maybe end the night on. So brilliant to see him, poke that one into the bottom corner late on, because first game all three have scored together since that 5-2 win over Roma in the semi-final first leg back in April. So that was one of the big positives on the night. The fact that those three, back firing and getting back to what we were treated to from them in that second half of last season.
Before we get into it, about individual performances, penalties, James, both penalties for you? little sly smile from Mane when he went down.
Yeah,
for the first one.
I think they were.
It's right out of your playbook, that wasn't it?
Yeah, I'd have definitely been claiming it.
Yeah, we know.
It was the first one was soft. I think I'm not sure that gets given in the Premier League, but I mean, I just think as a defender, you're always running the risk when you slam your arm across an attacker like that. And I've seen a lot worse decisions than that. And the same with the second one. I think sometimes the ref would have given the benefit of the doubt when it comes at you like that. But I think when you think of how many penalties Liverpool haven't got at Anfield, and there's that crazy stat in terms of the Premier League of how few they've had in the last 12 to 18 months. Klopp will be hoping that's a little bit of a change of luck as well. It felt for Mane a little bit because it was a fantastic save from the penalty. It wasn't a particularly poorly taken spot kick. But I think Salah might have been kicking himself because obviously that second penalty was awarded about 2 minutes after he'd been given his curtain call. But maybe a little bit of generous refereeing, but Liverpool didn't need that on the night because there was a massive gulf in class that they exposed.
Okay, Paul, we'll start talking about those individual performances. We'll start with Fabinho because he's someone, the Chelsea start in the League Cup aside, we've had to wait a long time to see start a game for Liverpool, and he really delivered last night, didn't he? Again, it felt like he had a little bit of a slow start, but once he got into the game, he was superb, wasn't he? Yeah,
he really grew into it, didn't he? He was a little bit sluggish the first 10 or 15 minutes, and then once he kind of got up to speed with the pace of the game, he was snapping into tackles, quite high up as well, which you don't really see from Liverpool's midfielders. He was putting in slide tackles in Red Star's final third.
He was stopping them in their tracks, wasn't he, before they could get out?
Obviously Liverpool's game is to press high, and he was doing that, but also putting in the sliding tackles and the meaty challenges that you don't really see. So I think he'll bring something completely different to Liverpool's midfield. He's been bought for a reason, and we've all touched on that for the last few months, haven't we? But it was good to finally see what he's all about in action in a big Champions League game. And I think he will be a very good addition to Klopp's midfield.
James, I really like the look of him. I love the way he zipped those passes in, didn't he, to the front three. Created a couple of goals at the start of the move, if you like. What did you make of him? Because, again, you've watched Liverpool every game this season. You've waited a long time to see him.
Really, really pleased for him. I think I was... Obviously, it's pretty clear from speaking to Klopp the day before the game with the injury situation, with Henderson being out, Keita being out, that it was going to be the night when Fabinho got his big chance. And you've got to say, he grasped it with both hands. I thought he was excellent. As Paul said, after maybe a bit of a slow start, Liverpool was slow out the blocks in general, but he massively grew into it. I think for the first time, you could see why Klopp sanctioned that £43 million deal for him, because there was I think the thing for me was how much more to his game there is than just defensive duties. I mean, he covered a lot of ground. I think he won the ball back 9 times over the course of 90 minutes. But aside from that, he's a lot more than just a kind of a midfield wrecking ball. He used the ball brilliantly. That lofted pass that put Trent in. If Trent could just have lifted that over the keeper, we'd have been buzzing off a fantastic assist for Fabinho. Just really confident with the ball at his feet. Just a massive step forward for him when after a really bleak couple of months, because I know Klopp has played it down and said it was the same situation with Robertson and Oxlade-Chamberlain last season. Some players just need time to adjust and get used to a new style, but it would have been tough for him. New country, new language. He doesn't speak much English. The difference in style of play. A pretty hefty price tag as well. Yeah. I think he's the 5th most expensive player Liverpool have ever signed. He'd have been desperate to get going and really establish that bond with the supporters. He hasn't been able to do that. It's been a tough time for him. But what you'd have to say is he's clearly taken on board what Klopp's asked of him on the training ground at Melwood. Obviously, circumstances have played into his hands a little bit as well with the injury situation, but to his credit, he looked ready for it last night, and that is a massive positive for Liverpool to take from that.
Would you both like to see him have a little run in the side now? That's fair, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. Klopp's options are kind of diminishing, aren't they, with injuries to Keita and Henderson. It was a big chance for Fabinho last night, and he's taken it, to be honest. See no reason why he shouldn't be playing for the weekend and maybe Fulham and Arsenal.
You've been listening to the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.